tears I shed for Coco had lubricated my neck so much that the knife slid off without penetrating the skin. It's called surface tension. You know, basic physics.
Ekum Bokum and Mazel Tov. Grunty's Revenge has become a man. 15 being the traditional age for a Game Boy Advance game's bar mitzvah. And this is The Kongversation, and I'm Hyle Russell.
And I'm Nick Prol.
Welcome to the show. Welcome back. It's been a while.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for having me on. Happy to be at your bar mitzvah.
Bear mitzvah. See, that was a better one. But I feel like without my setup, that wouldn't have been as good. So I'm just going to roll with it. I'm not going to beat myself up too much about it because we are in a celebratory mood because we're talking about one of my favorite topics of the Donkey Kong universe tonight. And that is Banjo-Kazooie Grunty's Revenge. This is actually the spotlight for Banjo-Kazooie Grunty's Revenge. We have two colons in our title this week, or this episode. It's an attack of the colons, as opposed to my colon getting attacked, which happened earlier this week when I ate cheese. If only I could turn back time on that one. But speaking of time travel, Nick, Grunty's Revenge, this is a weird game, and I know you have always told me you wanted to be on the eventual spotlight episode for Grunty's Revenge, and we generally do these spotlights one of 3 times: when it's the 20th anniversary, when it's the 15th anniversary, or whenever it just feels thematically appropriate to do one. And I would say this Grunty's Revenge spotlight falls in the latter 2. It's the 15th anniversary. This week, actually, I believe September 15th is actually when it turned, when it was born, but when it turns 15 this year, when it was first released back in 2003. But this is also Banjo-Kazooie's 20th anniversary. This is actually the last week of summer, for those of us in the Northern Hemisphere, so still the summer of Banjo, and, not only did Grunty's Revenge, turn 15 this year, the year of Banjo-Kazooie's 20th, but it's also, in-universe, takes place about 2 months after the events of Banjo-Kazooie, so it's kind of appropriate that we're doing it now, because this would be canonically kind of the 20th anniversary of those events of Grunty's Revenge taking place, or at least the initial events that set up the time travel, because Grunty's Revenge is, of course, Nick, both a midquel between Banjo-Kazooie and Banjo-Tooie, and a prequel to the entire Banjo series, so it's kind of confusing.
Yeah, I thought... Wait, that's why we're doing this? I thought it was because, 70s fashion is probably coming back pretty soon, and...
Is it?
I think so.
I don't think we're due for any 70s nostalgia anytime soon. I mean, in the 2020s, it'll be the 50th anniversary of all of the years in the 70s, so maybe we'll get some nostalgia there. Like, there was some, interest in 60s stuff this decade. But, anyway, yeah, wow, 50, God, time ravages us all, Nick. It's really depressing. It should be depressing me that Grunty's Revenge is 15 years old at all, because it just feels like yesterday I played it for the first time. But yeah, you've always said you wanted to be on the Grunty's Revenge spotlight, and
yes,
we're doing it. So here
finally.
We are. Yeah, and, I realize we haven't done the Banjo-Tooie spotlight, even though Banjo-Tooie was released before Grunty's Revenge, but I like that we're doing them in chronological order.
Yeah.
Why the hell not? So, we're there's only gonna be one episode. We're not gonna turn this into, the 4-part affairs for the Donkey Kong Country series, or, 3-part affair that was Diddy Kong Racing. Now, it's one and done, so... Apologies if we don't get as in-depth with Grunty's Revenge as you would like. We're going to try to do it justice, but I also feel like this is a game you also should just experience. So if you have not played Grunty's Revenge, I would really recommend, at the very least, watching a walkthrough. There are many walkthroughs on YouTube of Grunty's Revenge. Grunty's Revenge is a game that you're just going to have to either watch or play yourself. And, I'm very disappointed. I was doing my usual research for this episode, trying to just bone up on some things I'd forgotten. The Banjo-Kazooie wiki is severely underwritten when it comes to Grunty's Revenge information. Just entire swaths of pages that are not detailed in the slightest. So, luckily, I have a fairly good memory, but apologies if I stumble, because it has been quite some time since I've actually played the GBA version of Grunty's Revenge. And this is what the Spotlight is going to be about, the GBA version. It's not going to be about the mobile edition or missions. That will be a future Spotlight. A little bit about Grunty's Revenge before we really get into it. Grunty's Revenge was, of course, headed up by the famed Rare handheld team, which was really the most prolific team at Rare during the early buyout years. Some familiar names who worked on it, or at least appear in the credits, are Jamie Hughes, who did the music in lieu of Grant Kirkhope, Pete Hentz, who did art for the game, including the Tip-Tup suite. Also Ryan Stevenson did the art for it as well. Chris Alcock was in the credits as a tester for the game. Lee Loveday was listed as production support. I have no idea what the hell that means. I'm assuming he wrote some bits or bobs. And both Greg Males and Paul Makachek are listed under special thanks. I would imagine Greg Males did nothing for this game except they probably went to him for like, hey Greg, got any ideas? Got any suggestions or moral support? And they might have just been, it just might have been a courtesy since Banjo is Greg's baby. But Paul Makachek, I would imagine did quite a bit more. Although it's incredibly vague under the credits what he actually did. A little bit of the history of Grunty's Revenge, Nick. Did you know, and I'm sure you did, that it started life in development as a Game Boy Color game?
I did.
You did, yes. And most people know this by this point, but originally Banjo-Kazooie Grunty's Revenge was Banjo-Kazooie Grunty's Curse. And they started development for it in the summer of 1999, just a little over a year after the original Banjo-Kazooie was released. So this had been...
What Grunty's Curse, the original plot, wasn't it going to be that she was going to be on inside the actor's studio and James Lipton was going to ask her what her favorite word is or something?
Yes, that's a... Okay, I like the way your mind worked there, because you're... That's just like, such a reach for a joke. That's like,
why you have me on, right?
Yeah. It just, okay, so, curse. What can I do with the word curse? Well, James Lipton liked to ask people what their favorite curse word was, and that's a reference that's like 15 years old, right? So let's go with that one. Bravo, Nick. Bravo. This is how long, about 4 years, that the idea of a portable banjo game on a Game Boy platform was in development at Rare from conception to release. So I think it's interesting that, and we had no idea this was coming until E3 2001. So a little bit, 2 years or so that this was completely under wraps and not even really rumored. But we do thankfully have the original story pitch, the little story sheet that was written up at Rare for Banjo-Kazooie GBC, as it was known at the time. And this was written on August 10th, 1999.
And if you think it wasn't written in Comic Sans, you're wrong.
Oh yeah, it was written in Comic Sans, baby. This looks like something that would have been typed up by your high school teacher if you went to high school in the late 90s, early 2000s like I did, where they tried to be delightfully quirky and give you Comic Sans. And Nick, I've talked a little bit about this. We're gonna go on a font rant here. I'm not one of these font elitists, these font Frasers that, like, have a bug up their bonnet. Yes, I said bug up their bonnet about fonts. Like, I don't give a shit. Like, you know what? There are some fonts I like, there are some fonts I don't, but I honestly don't give a shit if anybody uses Comic Sans. Oh, it's not professional. Oh, it's a perfectly fine font. It's silly, maybe, but you don't want to use it if you know.
I just think of Rare now when I see it, like the buyout era. They used it so much. I know.
I like Comic Sans because I associate it with Rare. You know, I don't know. I don't get why these people like. And maybe this is just the benefit of getting older. Like, I tried to ride the anti-Comic Sans font, like, maybe a decade ago when I was really concerned what people thought about me and I wanted to be seen as sophisticated and urbane before I decided to just make a career out of running a Donkey Kong website. So, you know...
I think the idea behind the whole snobbery around Comic Sans is that it represents a sort of lack of self-awareness in that it's such a cliched font and... usually used in kind of amateur ways.
I get that, but I'm also...
Some guy on a, like... I don't know, I just remember visiting Indian reservations with my parents, and this is not going to be offensive, just a warning. Whenever we would see Native Americans, you know, like some sort of performance, like flute performance or dance thing we would go see, they'd be selling CDs afterwards, and I'd be like, ooh, cool, let me see the CD. And always be some, like, beautiful picture of, like, a mountain, and then, like, the guy playing the flute, and then Comic Sans at the top. And I'd be like, oh, poor Chief uses fonts. But he needs to know to not use sans.
I mean, I like Comic Sans just because of the Banjo and Yucca Association. And I'm trying to, I don't give a shit about, like, being a snob about things anymore. The only thing I'm really a snob about is beer, just because I think, like, Budweiser tastes like shit, so I'm not going to drink it, but I'm also not going to begrudge somebody if they want to drink it.
People drink beer for the taste? I didn't know that.
Yeah. I mean, if I want to get drunk, I'm just gonna chug some rum, you know, like
true.
If I want to slowly get a little tipsy while enjoying the robust flavor, I'm going to be drinking imported beer, or I'm just gonna be drinking hard cider. Angry Orchard, they still don't pay us, but they should. But anyway, yeah, font rant there. I don't care. Use Comic Sans all you want, unless you're like a lawyer or you work in government or something. Like, whatever. Just whatever makes you happy. That's my motto, Nick. So long as you're not hurting anybody and it makes you happy, yeah, go for it. All right.
I really think Horatio Sands should have a stand-up album called Comic Sans.
It's really upsetting to me now that he hasn't. And I used to complain about Horatio Sands on Saturday Night Live. I like Horatio Sands now. All right, Horatio Sands.
It's amazing.
Yeah, you know, it's like life's too short, Nick. Life is too short. So, would you like to read... we're not going to really, like, belabor Grunty's Curse, but also Grunty's Curse is never going to get its own episode. Like, we're never going to do Abortion Clinic Grunty's Curse, because it's essentially Grunty's Revenge. It just had a long development cycle. But I think we should read this story, this story treatment, because it is a little bit different than what we got.
All right, just read the whole thing?
Read the whole thing. This is actually what was typed up at Rare. This was never meant for the public's eyes. No. Somebody smuggled it out of Twycross in their butt and it got online. So, yeah, just start from the beginning.
Any voice you want, or just normal?
It's been a while since I've heard your voice. Your voice, right. Like the root beer float, Nick. I want to hear that voice.
All right. Let's see. My real voice. Let's use that. What's the story? Okay, sorry. What's the story? Recreate the end of Banjo in a scene or in text conversation. A few years have passed and... Oh yeah, this was written on August 10th, 1999, by the way, and it's titled Banjo-Kazooie GBC, but the C is, like, fainter than the G and the B, like it's faded. I don't know what's up with that.
I don't know what that's about. I think it's because somebody went back in time and prevented Marty McFly's mom from having intercourse with Kristen Glover. So, the C is slowly being erased.
The calm of a holiday on a farm was just what Banjo, Kazooie, Bottles, and Mumbo needed as they reflect on their... Okay, they've already fucked up the tense. Okay. Needed as they reflect on their battle with the wicked hag Gruntilda. Tootie is...
Okay, so can I just say the Comic Sans made me think that said the wicked hog Gruntilda.
Wow,
so I see the defects in Comic Sans. I get that. That's why you don't want to, I don't know, issue any court rulings in Comic Sans.
I don't know. She might have a wicked hog. Maybe she's from Boston. I don't know. Anyway, I don't even know what that means.
I don't know what that means.
Tootie is...
I thought you were going to say Sturgis or something because of the motorcycle connection. But
it just sounds like a Boston... Oh, that's a wicked hog. I don't know.
No, that doesn't. Okay.
Tootie is away having an adventure of her own elsewhere in Minecraft. Okay, it doesn't say that. But Kazooie wondered how much Gruntilda was enjoying herself under the rock. I don't think old Warty Whiskers is having this much fun. Oh, having this much fun. As our friends they don't say who said that, but okay.
Sounds like Kazooie.
Yeah.
They set it up as Kazooie saying it.
But they could have said Kazooie said or something. As
they
our friends...
Again, this was never meant for the public to read on a podcast.
I know, but it shows how much respect they have for their own staff. As our friends relax, things are afoot on Spiral Mountain. Klungo has returned from the form the lair
yeah.
in the flying cauldron, and he...
What?
Wait, flying cauldron?
What the flying cauldron? What is the flying cauldron?
I love how they say the flying cauldron. They could say a flying cauldron.
Yeah, as if we knew what the flying cauldron was. Okay.
I think it's an early Disney film not many people like. And he's got something to save Grunty. Klungo drops the metal mecha Grunty from the flying cauldron. Aha! Shouts Grunty, and her ghost shouts Grunty, and her ghost leaves the pit under He Rock and seeps into the metal monster. The camera moves... Yeah, go ahead.
He Rock is my favorite 80s action cartoon.
That's true, yeah. He Rock and the Eternals, I think it's called, or something. The camera moves to a close-up on the metal Grunty as its eyes flash to life and Grunty cackles with delight. Thank you, Klungo. I was tired of eating worms. With no quotes around that.
By the way, thank you, Klungo, ellipses.
Yeah, I was tired of it with no quotes.
The double spacing there of both a comma and ellipses. Completely unnecessary.
Totally. The scene changes back to our friends relax at the farm. A shadow looms over them. This was so rushed. This
is more typos than one of my Facebook posts, alright? This is like...
You know what? Banjo-Kazooie is better written than this. I gotta say.
This reminds me of when I have to be out of the house in 15 minutes, but I need to crank out a Facebook post, and I'm just typing, and I just have to get it out, and then I go back to read it later that night, and I'm thinking, oh my god, people are gonna think I'm such a moron.
I mean, obviously, this was just a rushed proof of concept, so. I mean, maybe whoever wrote this could have just read it aloud at the pitch meeting. No one ever saw it, or was supposed to even look at it.
Oh, yeah. I don't know. Maybe the stampers, were chomping their cigars.
So whoever wrote this, we're not mocking. We're just having a laugh.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe the stampers were chomping their cigars, cracking the whip, saying, "We need that Banjo-Kazooie GBC story treatment by the end of the day."
The chompers.
This day being August 10th. 1999, and this was 4:45, the end of the workday, and they were sweat on their brow. They were furiously typing this.
At least now we know that Phantom Menace was the second worst thing written in 1980. Okay, I was tired of eating worms. Well, okay, we're past that. Where are we? A shadow looms over them, and they feel a chill, looking like a twisted device of torture. It's the metal mecha Grunty. Grunty freezes the group to the spot and greets them with a curse. Fuck, she says. Beating me, it was the first. Your just reward will be my curse. Well, her curse? Oh, I see. She okay. And so it makes it sound like it's not going to be a good thing for her. Mumbo, capital S, since you helped this pair, the worst of luck will be your share. Bottles is transformed into a funny creature, and he wasn't already, and is unable to help Banjo. Your wormy breath I know too well. How does she... Ew. How does she know what his breath smells like? I'll give you 4 eyes with this spell. Grunty hypnotize. Wait, didn't he already have 4 eyes?
Wait, what did she do to Mumbo? Like, she said, Mumbo, since you helped this pair, the worst of luck will be your share. And then she just went to Bottles and transformed him into a 4-eyed creature. Oh, I think she literally gave him 4 eyes because... Okay.
Oh, they didn't really, like... That could have been explained a little better for the joke tour. Maybe she gave, like, Mumbo, like, bowel cancer or something. It's just bowel cancer? Yeah. I mean, that's like the worst thing. Is bowel cancer referred to, like, doctors, like, oncologists as the mumbo jumbo? Like, is that a pun that I'm not aware of? Oh, yeah, House MD on one episode, he's like, listen, you have a bit of the mumbo jumbo. Bottles is transformed, okay, blah, 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 your wormy breath. Grunty hypnotizes Kazooie and changes her into her new partner. Okay, into Grunty's new partner. Right. Oh, that's pretty cool. Kazooie, come to Grunty's roost. To be my wings, you'll need a boost. Banjo will be forced to fight his friend if he is to save Bottles. Stupid bear, to save your friend, you'll have to fight us to the end. Mumbo breaks loose from Mecha Grunty's gaze. Okay, so I guess she did nothing to him. She just hypnotized him?
She just hypnotized, yeah.
Wow. Chases after her as she and the monster Kazooie make their exit. Mumbo tries in vain to stop them, but with every step he takes, his luck gets worse. Out of thin air, his bad luck rains down on him. First, a black cat covers his face. Then, blinded, he runs straight under a ladder. And as the cat jumps away, a mirror lands on him, and he lays out in the broken glass. Holy shit. This is canon. Mumbo gets...
No, it's not.
No, okay, but it should be. Mumbo gets up with a bandage on his head. He can't remember his spells. All he knows... This person doesn't know how to spell. All he knows is Banjo will have to find a few magic ingredients to return lowercase Bottles to normal. In the years since they first fought, Banjo has forgotten all of his moves, how will he learn them again with Bottles in his condition, period. Banjo will have to find Bottles, no apostrophe, old man. He may be as blind as...
Banjo will have to find Bottles an old man, because that's Bottles' fetish.
Oh yeah, good point. He may be as blind as a bat, but the old curmudgeon taught Bottles everything he knew. He doesn't know it anymore, I guess, so that's accurate. At the end of the game, Banjo catches up with Grunty... Wow, we skipped a whole lot. At the end of the game, Banjo...
Yada, the whole game.
Gameplay, puzzles, yeah, who cares?
We'll figure it out. Fuck it.
At the end of... vehicles. Whatever, vehicles. At the end of the game, Banjo catches up with Grunty again back at Spiral Mountain. They have their big face-off, and the improved Mecha Grunty is destroyed. As the others rejoice, Grunty's ghost sinks back into the hole under the rock. Only this time, her body has turned to a pile of bones. The end? Question mark? Yeah. So the whole game is just to explain the origin of how she became a skeleton.
Well, yeah, so this is August 99, right? So, this is a year after Banjo-Kazooie. Banjo-Tooie was already, was knee-deep in development, so they were probably coordinating with the Banjo-Tooie team. They already knew Grunty was going to be a skeleton.
Which I do love that, actually. It reminds me of something that I can't remember, so I won't waste our time, but if it comes to me, I'll mention it.
That's as coherent as this story was written.
It's more coherent.
This explains why she's a skeleton. I mean, I guess in 2 years she would have decomposed, but she wasn't actually dead in, those 2 years. Grunty's curse and then Grunty's revenge both establishes that her spirit leaves her body for a time, so she's kind of dead, at least clinically, for a time under the rock, so that would speed up the decomposition process, I would imagine. Anyway, so there was some coordination there with the Banjo-Tooie team, but what's interesting here is, I guess they did frame this as a midquel back in the Grunty's Curse days, but obviously the Game Boy Color was kind of just a blip. Came out in 98, but it was only around for 3 years as the primary handheld device, because 2001 came knocking, and the Game Boy Advance came out.
Game Boy Color was my first handheld, so it was more than a blip to me.
Oh yeah, I mean, I have a lot of fond memories of the Game Boy Color. Ironically, my fondest memories, besides, Conker's Pocket Tales and what have you, is playing Pokemon Red and Blue, which were not even optimized for the Game Boy Color. But the Game Boy Advance was coming out, so they wisely shifted production to the Game Boy Advance very quickly, and then it got announced at, I think, one of the greatest E3s that Donkey Kong Universe fans ever had, E3 2001. Because alongside Donkey Kong Racing and the Star Fox Adventures retool of Dinosaur Planet getting announced, we got the 4 Game Boy Advance games from the Rare handheld team. We got Diddy Kong Pilot announced, which of course eventually became Banjo Pilot. See our abortion clinic episode on that from last year for more on the strange case of Diddy Kong Pilot. Donkey Kong Coconut Crackers, which became, obviously, It's Mr. Pants, one of the most beloved and weird games alongside Grunty's Revenge. Saber Wolf for the Game Boy Advance, and not DKU. And Banjo-Kazooie Grunty's Revenge.
Man, Diddy Kong Pilot, what? Yeah, wow. That was like the second worst plane-related tragedy that year.
The interesting thing, Nick, about Grunty's Revenge, as it was announced at E3 2001, was the story at the time was presented not as a midquel, but weirdly enough, as an alternate timeline game. Yes. So it was announced that this was actually taking place in a secondary reality from Banjo-Tooie. So instead of Banjo-Tooie, events diverged in a separate timeline to show what would happen had Gruntilda escaped the rock herself with Kongo's help.
Does this give you like all kinds of DC Comics boners? Or?
I don't know. I'm thinking more like J.J. Abrams' Star Trek.
Oh, okay.
Like the whole Kelvin timeline thing. Grunty escaped the rock herself. Her sisters never came. And it was presented as an alternate timeline, which was weird. And I think, looking back on the development of this game, it was started development in August 99. I think they were trying to get the game out originally before Banjo-Tooie even came out. They obviously did not succeed. And I think because it came out so long after, or it was announced almost, a year after Banjo-Tooie came out, they thought, well, we have to change the storyline because it's being released after. Well, so it can't take place before Banjo-Tooie now. So what if it just takes place instead of Banjo-Tooie? And then at some point, somebody at Rare obviously had the right idea, and they said, no, this is just too stupid and convoluted to introduce alternate timelines and separate canons and continuities. Let's just tell the fans that it takes place between the two. They will accept it. They're a smart bunch. Thank God they did that. Thank Log they did that. And we did get it. Although it's interesting that even to this day, some people still operate under the false impression that it is an alternate timeline game and it doesn't actually take place in the main continuity or timeline of the Banjo series. You still get that. People bring that up from time to time.
Why would they think that?
Because they never got the memo that was changed.
If you play the game, it's pretty...
Yeah, well, if you play the game, there's nothing to say that it isn't. It's just... The only
There's nothing
reason
to say it is, either.
The only reason we know it was changed was because we asked Lee Loveday about it in Scribes, and he said, no, we abandoned that. The only way you would know that is if you followed the original, release or announcement and the whole development and release cycle. But if you didn't do that, then you wouldn't know that weird piece of trivia, and then you wouldn't be operating under that false impression to begin with. So,
have I told you about my overall opinion of where the game stands in my ranking? Because it might be a little controversial. Banjo-Kazooie, Grunty's Revenge, is better than the first Banjo-Kazooie game.
That's a ludicrous opinion.
I am 100%. And I don't think it's better than Tooie, though. But I think it's better than the first Banjo-Kazooie game.
So your rankings are Banjo-Tooie is number 1.
Yes, then Grunty's Revenge, then Banjo-Kazooie, then Banjo-Pilot. Or no, then Banjo Nuts and Bolts, then Banjo-Pilot.
What about the mobile Grunty's Revenge?
That's like
Missions?
tied with Grunt. Actually, Missions is above Tooie. No, I'm just kidding. No, but that's at the very bottom. But yeah,
right.
Grunty's Revenge better than Banjo-Kazooie in my opinion. And I should.
You're an odd man, Nick.
I want people to call in and tell me why I'm wrong. I dare you, because I can literally back up every reason I have. I'm a computer scientist. I know about game design. I went to game college in Seattle.
That's what it's called. Yeah.
And I went to DigiPen.
Anyway, it was announced in E3 2001, and then a little something happened in 2002 called the buyout, and Microsoft purchased Rare. So that kind of threw the whole release slate up in the air. Donkey Kong Racing became Saberman Stampede, and then that became canceled. We got Diddy Kong Pilot, refitted as Banjo Pilot. Coconut Crackers became It's Mr. Pants. Banjo-Kazooie Grunty's Revenge stayed truest to itself during this whole ordeal. It's still kind of fascinating to me that Microsoft purchased Rare, but they were still able to release everything they were developing for the Game Boy Advance. The Game Boy Advance games, obviously they couldn't do anything original with the Donkey Kong license. They didn't stop them from doing 3 remakes of the Donkey Kong Country games and then Diddy Kong Racing DS, but they couldn't do anything wholly original like Donkey Kong Coconut Crackers or Diddy Kong Pilot. So they had to reform those as Banjo games. It was the obvious choice to make. Banjo Pilot, that is. Mr. Pants, was a Banjo spin-off character, if you want to get technical with it. But Banjo Pilot was the obvious choice to make. It's Mr. Pants was the least obvious choice to make, but they made it, thankfully. But Grunty's Revenge was able to be released. I don't think they really altered anything for it because of the buyout. The only thing that they had to do was they had to publish it through a company because Nintendo wouldn't publish it, and Microsoft didn't have any avenues for publishing Game Boy Advance games, so they had to go through a company, and they went through THQ. THQ did a terrible job of promoting and distributing these Game Boy Advance games.
No, they didn't.
With the exception of Grunty's Revenge. Grunty's Revenge got magazine ads.
Yeah,
it got a health.
In my original It's Mr. Pants box, there is a Banjo-Kazooie Grunty's Revenge poster. That's promotion, dude.
Yeah, yeah, because everybody who bought It's Mr. Pants would have never known about Grunty's Revenge. They cast It's Mr. Pants with a very limited production run and no promotion. Saberwolf got a little bit of promotion, maybe, but
no, it didn't.
Whatever. It got a very little bit.
I read about it in Tips and Tricks one time, and that's it.
Banjo Pilot, by that point, they were just done with it. But Grunty's Revenge, they treated like a big deal because they knew, hey, we got the Banjo-Kazooie license. It's still a hot commodity. Let's, we can make some coin with this game. So THQ did right by Grunty's Revenge. What's also interesting about Grunty's Revenge is that there was sort of a cottage industry developed around Grunty's Revenge. Because we've already mentioned these numerous times in this episode, but there were two mobile releases for Grunty's Revenge. There was Grunty's Revenge Mobile, which basically ported most of the game, sort of. It was a stripped down version of Grunty's Revenge with things reconfigured. It was basically, imagine a handheld port of a handheld port. That's what Grunty's Revenge Mobile was.
Yes.
And then there was missions which took the mini games from Grunty's Revenge and put them in their own game, hence the missions. I actually like the mobile game, but we're not going to talk about that here. We'll save that for its own episode somewhere down the line. So similar to Grunty's Curse, Klungo comes to Grunty's rescue with the Mecha Grunty robot body, the shell, and he's like, beam your ghost in this, Grunty, and that I can't get the rock off you, but I can build a very complicated robot that can contain a spirit. Klungo's kind of like the professor from Gilligan's Island. He's brilliant. He can make all of these very ludicrous inventions with nothing but a coconut, but he can't get off the fucking island. He can't get this rock off Gruntilda, but he can make a robot body for her.
That's a good point.
That can contain a spirit. Like, what?
Wait, he's a Ghostbuster.
Yeah, I mean, it's essentially Ghostbuster technology. A little bit more advanced than Ghostbuster technology. It's kind of like the containment unit, but one that also works as a robot.
Ghost in the shell.
Okay, I'll allow it. She decides to kidnap Kazooie and go back in time 20 years.
Yeah, why not just do one of those?
One of them, like, just kidnap and kill Kazooie. Like, slit her throat, you're done. I win. Grunty's the best.
Villains never really do the easy way. They want to be maniacal about it.
Or go back in time 20 years, and her ultimate plan is a bit murky, but it involves making sure Banjo and Kazooie never meet in the 1990s. And it's never really expanded or fleshed out, like, what she's doing back there. She just said she's going to make sure that Banjo-Kazooie never meet. So I presume her plan is to murder Kazooie's parents, because we get into some of the Breagle backstory a little bit, but that's never really touched upon again in the game. So she kidnaps Kazooie to make sure Banjo can't really succeed in following her, and then she goes back in time to make sure they never meet in the first place. Okay, Mumbo then says, okay, luckily I know the same spell Grunty used, so I'm gonna send you back 20 years, and you can stop her from changing time. Very Terminator. Grunty is Arnold here, in a robot, body, and Banjo is Kyle Reese,
and Klungo is Christian Bale.
We are done professionally, Grunty. Did you just walk into my lab? Get the fuck off the set, amateur.
Banjo goes back, but they helpfully explain that by going through the time tunnel, Banjo will forget all of his moves that he learned in Banjo-Kazooie temporarily. So when he gets back, he'll relearn them in time for Tooie. I like the weird little things they go out of their way to make sure Banjo-Tooie still works, with this game bizarrely taking place between the two. So that's the plot of the game. What a weird plot.
I like it. It's better than Banjo-Tooie's. Banjo-Tooie, first of all, can I just get started on how that game just propagates the male gaze, okay? Oh, so Grunty is not worth anything unless she's hot. Okay, so I'm gonna steal the hotness from an underage toddler? I mean, fuck that
toddler?
Game, dude. She's small, she's a child.
Okay, but I don't think she's a toddler. Like, Kiddy Kong is a toddler.
Okay, a preteen? It's fucked up.
Okay, I'll allow it, yeah.
And the game is equating that preteen with the supermodel. So, I say Grunty's Revenge still better than Banjo-Kazooie, even in story alone. I mean, Banjo-Kazooie is just, we're gonna do Super Mario 64, but reskin it. And, somehow this giant Grunty's lair is all connected. It doesn't make any sense going into pictures. I like time travel because it's actually tried and true sci-fi. It's hard sci-fi. Harlan Ellison, or whatever his name is, would love Grunty's Revenge.
Nick Prol with the hot takes on this episode.
Hashtag GR better.
I feel like Axl Rose will just see that.
I get it, because he has gastro reflux disease
caused by the mumbo jumbo, obviously. So let's talk a little bit about the characters of Grunty's Revenge, Nick.
My favorite part, actually.
Obviously, there's Banjo-Kazooie, which,
fuck them.
Whatever. It's interesting to me, though, that they split up Banjo and Kazooie for,
the whole game.
First world. Well, no, it's the first world. Kazooie is just a non-entity.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
It's just Banjo.
But this game gets deep into the lore. That's what I like about it.
Yeah, and that's what I like about handheld games. Handheld games of this era could get a little bit weirder than their console big brothers and sisters. This game wasn't afraid to be bizarre. Like, if this was the plot of the console sequel, like, if this was actually the plot of Banjo-Tooie, it would be like, what the fuck? Like, they've completely gone off the rails.
Here's a hot take you might agree with me on. Okay, Donkey Kong Country 1, better than Super Mario World, obviously, and Donkey Kong Country 2, better than Donkey Kong Country 1. But Donkey Kong Land, better than Donkey Kong Country 1.
That's another hot take that I don't necessarily agree with, but...
Flying pigs. Enough said.
Yeah, no. It is the Donkey Kong Land thing. They get a little bit looser, they get a little bit sillier, but it's okay because...
I'm just kidding. I do play Land 1 more than I play Country 1, if I'm gonna be honest. But no, it's not better. I mean, obviously, fidelity-wise and every importance-wise, Country 1 is way better, but Grunty's Revenge is still better than Banjo-Kazooie.
I do get the general point where Donkey Kong Jungle Beat, we had this like very like volatile reaction to it when it came out because it was so bizarre in some respects as far as like enemy design and stuff. But you look at Donkey Kong Land, which we cherish, and it had flying pigs, levels in the clouds. And why didn't we care as much about Donkey Kong Land getting looser with Donkey Kong's world? And I think that's just because it was a handheld game. The stakes were lower. You
can sneak in genius in handheld games, but no one noticing.
The console games we expect a little bit more out of, and so handheld games can kind of take you by surprise, and you're more open to it, weirdly enough.
Game Boy Color Perfect Dark? Better than Perfect Dark. I'm going to say it. I'm going to say it.
You bastard. Kazooie doesn't even get rescued by Banjo. Like, thankfully the plot isn't like Kazooie's kidnapped the entire time. It is resolved in the second world. But it's weird that like you have this Banjo-Kazooie game where Kazooie is just nowhere to be found for the entire first world. Granted, the worlds are smaller, so it's not, it's not like a
what they should do in the remake, the HD remaster? They should have like half of the game you get to play with Kazooie because everyone would want that, but then another half it's like Banjo when he's alone, he's in a room with like that monster Kazooie or something, and he shoves it in his backpack, and he has to kind of like get along with that one for like a while. That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, the whole monster Kazooie thing was ultimately dropped from the plot.
I know, but if it was still in the game, that'd be cool.
No.
They could reintroduce
I'm just explaining to the nice people listening. But you can find the original GPC sprites online, and you can see what Monster Kazooie would have looked like with Grunty.
Look that up right now.
There's Banjo-Kazooie, then there's Mumbo, and for more on this, see the Mumbo Jumbo Character Witness episode from last season. So present day Mumbo sends Banjo back in time like Marty McFly. For the duration of the adventure, then you're actually being assisted by Mumbo's younger self, Mumbo 78. And Mumbo 78 helps Banjo and eventually Kazooie in the past, transforming the bear into a mouse, a candle, an octopus, and a tank. And Mumbo works a little bit differently in Grunty's Revenge, because rather than having the transformations limited to a single world, you can actually pick the transformation you want in any world. You get a wheel to choose from.
Hence, better than Banjo-Kazooie.
Pete Hence.
Oh yeah,
better than Banjo-Kazooie. The cool thing though about this is obviously there are some transformations suited to certain worlds, but they invent circumstances where you might need a transformation that you already used in part of another world. So it definitely opens up more possibilities. And I feel like something like this would have broken the console Banjo games. Like, you don't want to have the bee transformation in an earlier world like Mumbo's Mountain, because there's nothing in Mumbo's Mountain that would warrant flying up, and that would just break it.
Well, getting to the top with a termite thing, but that would like ruin the whole termite thing.
That would break it, yeah. If you don't unlock the bee transformation until late in the game, and then you go back, you've probably already done the termite thing. But still, it would be kind of the equivalent of ukulele, where you learn the flying move, and then you go back into earlier worlds, and there's just no challenge there. You just like knock it over like dominoes at that point. I feel like it's more suited for the top-down isometric style. And also, like, the Grunty's Revenge transformations aren't necessarily as impressive as some of the console transformations.
That's your opinion.
I mean, but they're like, it's a mouse, it's a fucking candle. The octopus is the coolest one, in my opinion. Anyway, as we mentioned in this character witness episode, Mumbo78 is a bit of a Lothario. He's a little bit skeevier than modern.
It's like
Mumbo.
Leisure Suit Mumbo.
Yeah. He's got like the whole like lava lamp. He's got the disco ball, bearskin rug, or not bearskin rug. That would be just too weird. But they are animal skin rugs. Well, for more on this, see our character witness episode from season 5. So, and Mumbo, he is just starting out as a shaman, so he's not as skilled with the transformative arts as they were.
He's a Shaw boy at this point.
Yes. You've got Bazai. Bazai is the Bazai has been in this game since Grunty's Curse. He was a grandpa mole there, but they established him as Bazai. So Bazai is, in this interpretation of the plot, the canonical plot. It's never established how he's related to bottles or jam jars. He is just some sort of vague ancestor, either their grandfather or some sort of crazy uncle. But that's what
the mole version of Cranky, kind of, although nicer.
Cranky is definitely Donkey Kong's grandfather, who raised him as a father.
Oh yeah.
So
not in that regard, just in the regard that he has a big old beard.
Yeah. And he's also a little bit senile, and he's called Bazai. He's got a lazy eye, looking in one direction. Kazooie gives him shit for that, because Kazooie is just heinous in that regard.
Like, what's with the Baz stuff? Like, there's so many double Z British, names in their games that I don't get. Like, Baza, Wazza, Kaza, Causer, Fawzer. What's with that? I'm not even kidding.
I don't know, Nick. I don't know.
What's Spuzz mean, for Christ's sake? I think it's some British.
Yeah, Spuzzwick, right? I don't know what Bazai. It's just a wonky eye, I think. It's just probably one of those colloquialisms that never translated to the Americas, or can't. Maybe Canada. Maybe our Canadian friends would know. I don't know.
He leaned right over, spread his cheeks, and showed me his bullseye.
Bazai is the bottles and jam jars of the game. He teaches you the moves that you need to know. Honeybee is in the game, and she serves the same purpose she does in Banjo-Tooie. And the interesting thing about Honeybee being in this game is the Honeybee from 1978. So Honeybee is canonically at least in her 40s in Banjo-Tooie.
Wow, so she looks good for her 40s.
All natural. She rubs that honey on her face, and
it also explains why she's called Honeybee, because that's such a 70s blaxploitation name.
We might have brought this up on the Mumbo character witness, probably. Yeah, but now this does potentially create a continuity wrinkle, because in Banjo-Tooie, it doesn't seem like Banjo and Kazooie know Honeybee.
Oh, it's just Obi-Wan had a twinkle in his eye thing. You know that theory?
No.
When Obi-Wan says, I don't recall ever having any droids, some fans are like, you can clearly see there's a twinkle in his eye when he says that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
it's like a CGI twinkle in there.
Sure, I'll allow it, whatever. Jinjo Oracle is a character in this. And
wait a second. Wait. Do you realize how silly it is what we just talked about being a continuity error? There's a continuity error in the first 5 minutes of Banjo-Kazooie, because he has a framed picture of fucking bottles on his wall, and then he meets them for the first time.
No, we've already established, though, Nick, that 2D gave him that portrait, and
here's a picture of my friend you don't know. Put it in your living room.
It's like, all right, 2D, I'll hang it up. I don't have any fine art.
It is Banjo, by the way. Banjo's an idiot. How's he going to remember Honeybee?
Well, I don't think it's fair to say he's an idiot. I think you're being a bit of a font Frasier there, Nick. I think...
For God's sake, Niles, it's Courier.
Jinjo Oracle, Nick. Jinjo Oracle is another ghost inhabiting an inanimate object in this game, but in this case it is a Jinjo Oracle.
That's kind of mean of his parents to name him that. Like, he has a lot to live up to his whole life. I'm sorry. Sorry.
Jinjo Oracle is a she.
Sorry.
I think it's a title, like so many of these other things.
No, that's a name.
I don't think Jinjo Nader.
I voted for Jinjo Nader in the...
Yeah, okay, I was going to say, unless it's Jinjo Nader, and then it just, like, hey, what if I call myself the Jinjo Nader? Like, I wonder if Ralph Nader, like, whenever he's feeling really, like, cocksure and confident, like, I'm going to run for president again, he calls himself the Ralph Nader.
Maybe.
Jinjo Oracle basically gives you clues. Jinjo Oracle appears in every world, including Spiral Mountain. Master Jiggy Wiggy. Again, they take a lot from Banjo-Tooie, which I find interesting. Master Jiggy Wiggy serves the same function he served in Banjo-Tooie. He unlocks the worlds for you. You collect the Jiggies, you go to him. He uses the Crystal Jiggy to unlock the worlds. A little bit more on Master Jiggy Wiggy in a bit. We've got Mr. Ripofsky.
Gotta love him.
So this is an original character for Grunty's Revenge. Mr. Ripofsky appears in numerous worlds. He's basically a scam artist.
Animal Crossing ripped off this game, no pun intended, with Mr. Resetti. He's a, like, rodent who, what he does is in his name, or what he talks about. It's a ripoff.
Yeah, except Mr. Ripofsky sounds vaguely like racist towards like Eastern Europeans.
It's
or,
like those Polish scam artists.
I know. I think Matt made a joke about this in the DK Vine gallery with the captions, like Mr. Not a Racist Nemo. He runs a lot of mini games throughout the worlds. And what's interesting about Ripofsky is that he does reappear in Banjo Pilot in the present day. He appears in the crowd scenes when at the podium. He appears, just makes a cameo. So Mr. Ripofsky still alive and kicking in 2005 at least. So his scam artist ways never caught up with him. He never like crossed a mark who decided to get revenge and like put a bullet in his back or anything. So Mr. Ripofsky, his conning ways.
I don't know why, but I just keep thinking of Super Mario Brothers the movie, like that rival plumber family or whatever. What were they called?
I think that was Wario and Waluigi.
Oh yeah. Oh, that the sequel. Make it all make sense.
Yeah, now that Bob Hoskins has been dead for several years, let's do the sequel.
Hey, they make it. I say they Who Framed Roger Rabbit it, make animated Bob Hoskins.
They just have Luigi mourning Mario.
Wait, like, Luigi's dead too, dude. Canon.
So we've also got Klungo. Klungo. What's weird about Klungo
is how he looks in this game.
Okay, well, we'll get into his design too.
Best
his
Klungo
weird Game
ever.
Boy Advance design. Klungo, he appears in the present day. Gruntilda goes back in time, but doesn't take. I think the Klungo in 1978 is supposed to be Klungo from 1978, but he doesn't seem weirded out that the Gruntilda that's running around is the Gruntilda from 1998. So there is this weirdness because we never see 1978 Gruntilda, even though she's somewhere off camera, building her lair and everything. But the Gruntilda who's running around is from 1998 in the robot body. But the Klungo who's running around is from 1978, but he doesn't seem weirded out that he's working with the Gruntilda from 20 years in the future, even though the Gruntilda from his present, 78, is also there. And is he keeping the future Grunty from the past Grunty to prevent the gameplay of Grunty's Revenge? So, as we've already mentioned, it's isometric, it's top-down, it's similar to Conker's Pocket Tales, but I think it's a lot more successful at incorporating...
Oh, wait, yeah. Sorry to interrupt, but yeah, I was going to say that. I view this as a spiritual sequel to Conker's Pocket Tales.
Of course you do. No, I mean, there are some similarities. Well, there are some similarities, but Conker's Pocket Tales took a lot from, I think, Zelda, just as far as, like, what you had to do.
I'm just saying it's like a 3D mainline game being translated into an isometric, quirky game that no one knows about or talks about. It's just kind of the same family.
The difference is Conker's Pocket Tales came out Conker's Pocket Tales was kind of adapting a game that never saw release in that iteration.
True. Although this is adapting Grunty's Curse.
Well, that's kind of it evolved from Grunty's Curse.
And another difference is Conker's Pocket Tales is better, thus making it better also than Banjo-Kazooie.
Nick, your brain is going to some weird places tonight. The thing about Grunty's Revenge is that it adapts the gameplay of the Banjo-Kazooie series very successfully for the kind of game it is. It's not like 100% authentic to the Banjo-Kazooie N64 experience.
No, it does a damn good job of replicating it for the time, I think. That's what impressed me the most is I honestly expected it to play about as good as Conker's Pocket Tales. But when I played it, I was like, oh, this feels pretty good. Like, it's not a 1-to-1 or anything, but they did a good job.
I mean, you've got the same mechanics. You've got jiggies, you've got music notes, you've got mumbo transformations.
It just feels good. I don't know why. Like, I know it's weird. It feels a little weirder limited to just the D-pad. Like, there's no... Is there directional or diagonal movement? I forget. Someone in the chat, I think Dustin said he played it recently. Tell me if there's diagonal movement. Okay, Godzilla Guy said yes, there is. So
there is, okay.
So yeah, I think I remember it feeling pretty surprisingly good.
It does play great. It feels good. It feels like a Banjo game that just has an isometric view, and it's a little, simplified.
A little janky.
Yeah, but they did a great job, whereas Conker's Pocket Tales, it's not a platformer. It's
completely different.
Weird.
It's like an adventure game almost in some weird ways.
If you pick up Conker's Pocket Tales expecting a cute, kid-friendly version of Bad Fur Day, you're obviously not going to get that. Obviously, the circumstances were different, but you pick up Grunty's Revenge expecting a top-down Banjo-Kazooie, that's exactly what you get.
Wait, you don't get a kid-friendly version of... Oh, I see what you're saying, gameplay-wise.
Gameplay-wise,
because you do essentially get a kid-friendly version of Conker's Bad Fur Day. Yeah.
It plays completely differently. And honestly, looking at what 12 Tales is going to be, I think it plays pretty differently to what 12 Tales or Conker's Quest.
If you read was EU stuff, like Conker's Even Worse Week, it's not exactly kid-friendly during that time period. So
That's a gratuitous self-plug for DKU Comics.
For the arc that no one fucking liked. Okay, let's move on.
Because it's Conker's Pocket Tales, Nick. Nobody cares. Let's talk about the worlds of Grunty's Revenge. So, we're not going to get too in depth because we're not going to be,
No.
And then to get this jiggy, you have to do this. This isn't a, we're just going to be touching upon each world. And you can mentally insert John Lovitz shouting out each one if that helps.
Can I do it?
Spiral Mountain is the hub world. And
Spiral Mountain!
That's great. Spiral Mountain is the hub world, and it's much different in 1978 than it was in 1998. It's bigger. It has entrances to numerous worlds that are inaccessible 2 decades later because they're not, in the games.
It stinks!
These are to be taken in my opinion, these are to be taken as the same kind of worlds as the ones found in Grunty's lair.
Yes.
And we discover that they're open in the first place because Spiral Mountain is the original location of Master Jiggy Wiggy and the Church of Jiggy Wiggy.
That is cool lore right there. She kicked them, out of their natural habitat and put them on a reservation.
Master Jiggy Wiggy, he had his original temple with the crystal Jiggy in Spiral Mountain. And there was also the Jinjos. Spiral Mountain, as we learned in Grunty's Revenge, was the Jinjo homeland. King Jingaling used to live. Too many similar names. Jiggy Wiggy, Jingaling.
Oh my gosh. Wait, Jingaling is the Jinjo, right?
Jingaling is the King Jingaling is the Jinjo.
I know
king.
this. I love
Master Jiggy Wiggy.
These games. I don't know why I just got them confused for a second there.
It's a lot to take in. Master Jiggy Wiggy is the jiggy-headed cult leader of the Church of Jiggy Wiggy. So yeah, Spiral Mountain used to be like the central hub of the Banjo world, and Gruntilda moved in and forced them all out when she built her lair. So that's like such a inventive part of the backstory.
It's positively Tolkien-esque in that she represents the industrialism. I mean, look at her factory and
so much of Grunty's Revenge does like explain where Grunty's like kind of war machine comes from. We've got like so many little pieces of the origin. It really does do a great job of serving as a prequel that's actually a midquel. It's like here is this all this stuff about Banjo's world that the N64 games are never going to bring up. Here you go. As a hardcore fan of this stuff, it's just catnip to me because
this is like DK buying the game essentially.
Well, this is the kind of stuff that I would fan wank if it wasn't provided for us.
Yeah,
you've got the jingling head right beneath Grunty's recently constructed head. So yeah, originally Grunty's lair was where the Jinjos lived, and then you had the Church of Jiggy-Wiggy.
That is so fucked up. She like put them in little Jinjo village, a reservation where they're selling their CDs of Jinjo music with Comic Sans font. It's just fucked up.
I know you're doing your whole callback shtick, but that is essentially essentially what happened.
I could do a callback and be right at the same time. It's not impossible.
Yeah, you can. Unlike Arrested Development Season 5.
Oh, I loved that.
You like Season 5? Like,
oh, yeah.
I'll have to rewatch it. It just...
You're sounding like the people that shat on 4.
No, I love 4.
Me too.
I think where they lost me was the Portia de Rossi terrible green screening.
Oh wait, Portia de Rossi stuff was awful. Love's a strong word, but I had some good laughs. It's not the best.
I liked some of the bits.
I love when he. Okay, we shouldn't go on a tangent. I'm sorry.
So anyway, yeah, Spiral Mountain is also just like completely laid out differently than, of course, it was in the other games. But we can just fan wank that away, saying Grunty terraformed it to make it fit her vision, and she also sealed up the worlds that once existed, that were once accessible from Spiral Mountain. So let's talk about these worlds, shall we? Cliff Farm, Nick.
Cliff Farm.
Cliff Farm is the first world, and it's memorable because it's the first world, but it's honestly there's the least amount of stuff going on.
Yeah, did you forget
Cliff
to
Farm?
Put, not to break down the fourth wall? Did you forget Cliff Farm in your notes?
No, I just didn't have anything to say about Cliff Farm.
Oh, there's so much to say. I love it.
I mean, I like it. It's just a farm. It's a farm world.
But think about it this way: it's one of the few. Actually, it's the only world in the game that we've not already seen in a Banjo game, archetype-wise.
Yeah,
that's why I like it. It feels like Autumn Fall or whatever it's called. Autumn Falls, is that what it is? No, Autumn in Tropical Freeze. What's that level called?
Autumn Heights.
Autumn Heights. It's like that. Like I love those rural levels when they do that in the DKU. I love that.
I think it's least memorable for me because there's no extensive lore. Like the other worlds all provide some bit of lore that enriches the Banjo-Kazooie backstory. Cliff Farm is just a farm, and I think it's an artifact of Grunty's Curse because the Grunty's Curse plot had them vacationing on a farm.
I have my own headcanon for this. I think it...
Okay.
Because if you think about it, okay, the main tone or instrument palette of the Banjo-Kazooie soundtrack is essentially farm music. Is banjos, it's down-home music.
Yeah.
And then whenever you go
xylophone, that farmland favorite, the xylophone.
It's quaint. It's like, it's like children's Tinker Toys and farmland instruments. It's the banjo is what I'm talking about. Anyway, the banjo is like the main instrument that you hear a lot in the game. And then when you go into other worlds, they sort of like take these great little banjo ditties and put that other world's theme over it.
Why are you talking about ditty now?
For fuck's sake. This is one of those few levels where they don't have to put a spin on the banjo music. It's just banjo music. This is a farm. It just feels fit. It feels like if it were in one of the main games, it'd be too on the nose. But the fact it's in the handheld game is like, finally, we get Banjo in his natural habitat. I feel like this is where Banjo's from. This is where he lives. Or lived. Or grew up.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I think Spiral Mountain works as far as a rural atmosphere, too.
Oh, yeah. Fuck everything I just said.
Cliff Farm is memorable for me, though, because of the animals that live on the farm. There are the bleaters. Not bleaters. Bleaters. Bleat. They're sheep. And there is the cluckers.
Oh, Mama Clucker. What's her name?
Mama Clucker,
yeah, I
right?
love her.
Yeah.
One of my favorite Banjo characters.
Well, honestly, like, a lot of the Grunty's Revenge cast, the cast of weirdos, are among my favorite Banjo characters. They're some of them are piss takes. Some of them are just...
My Discord avatar for a long time, or Skype, whatever, the DK Van Inner Circle avatar was Mr. Drippy. I love Mr. Drippy.
Was it Alfred P. Cox?
Yeah, I refer to him as Mr. Drippy. That's his pseudonym.
Because he runs the...
Mr. Drippy's ice cream truck.
We'll get into Spiller's Harbor, my friend.
Not the only harbor, or it's not the only spilling in that harbor.
Cliff Farm is also the first time you fight Klungo. Like Banjo-Tooie, you fight Klungo multiple times. Klungo basically serves as a makeshift boss in several of the worlds. So, and Klungo apparently had a lab somewhere in the farm. So, anyway, yeah.
Cliff Farm also sounds like it could be like a real estate agent's name. Cliff Farm, how you doing?
I'll allow that. Let's move on to Breagle Beach.
Now, here's where lore gets cool.
Yes. Now, this is a beach where the Breagles congregate. And
not where they come from?
So here's my... Well, I don't know if they come here or they migrate here.
I was going to say, maybe migrate. But
because here's my theory, Nick. My theory is that Kazooie's parents, because Kazooie's parents are never a thing in this game's plot, but Gruntilda has to go back in time somehow to prevent Banjo-Kazooie from meeting. And I don't think Kazooie was alive in 1978, so it must be her parents or grandparents or something. But anyway, Kazooie's family, I believe, were members of the Church of Jiggy Wiggy, the Jiggy Wiggy cult. And the Jiggy Wiggy opened up Breagle Beach for the Breagles. And so a large percentage of the Breagles were a part of this essentially Scientology-esque Jiggy cult.
Sure, and I do stretches, sure.
Unfortunately, Gruntilda, the time-traveling... No, not the time-traveling Gruntilda. Gruntilda from 1978 enslaved some of the Breagles to work in a quarry in Breagle Beach, where the rocks that they chip away at will go towards the construction of Gruntilda's lair. And Gruntilda from 1998 sneaked Kazooie into the quarry. This is where you rescue Kazooie. But you also meet a young Captain Blubber here.
That's awesome.
He's a little kid. He's got this little club called the Pirate Scouts, and basically.
So how old is Captain Blubber? Can we extrapolate? Because that means he's younger than Mumbo. He's younger than Honeybee. That's weird. He looks way worse than Honeybee.
Blubber is probably no older than 10, but probably around 8 or something here.
Okay.
So he'd be 28 to 30 in Banjo-Kazooie.
How old are Banjo and Kazooie in this year, you think? Or are they even born?
Banjo might be a little kid. It's never gone into. I don't think Kazooie is alive at this point. But,
is that pretty old for a bear? How long do bears live?
I think we're just supposed to assume that the Kongs and the bears and whatnot have just basic human lifespans.
Oh, okay.
Through evolutionary quirks because it's too depressing to think otherwise.
Huh. So my uncle's dead, but Donkey Kong's alive. That's a sad thought.
Look, I'll take Donkey Kong over most of my uncles, so...
True. I feel like Swanky kind of is a uncle in many ways.
I've learned more from the Kongs than I have my own family.
The sad part is that might be true. I don't know.
I'm a better person because I followed the examples of the Kongs rather than my own family. Because there's some racists in my family. See, he's got the Pirate Scouts, which I love that, you don't see too many Banjo characters in the past in this game.
No.
But I feel like Blubber was an appropriate choice because it's not gonna like ruin things if he encountered Banjo, an adult Banjo, when he was a kid, because when you meet him in Treasure Trove Cove in '98, he's obviously not gonna think this is the same bear if he even remembers that bear. And
you know what I like? The fact that I kind of realized over time, because in Banjo-Kazooie, when that just first came out, that shit game that's worse than this one, Captain Blubber was just one of the many side characters. But then it's like he showed up in this. He showed up in Nuts and Bolts. It's like I think Rare loved him more than we think at the time. You know, like it's kind of funny how they kept putting him in it. They must have really liked him.
The salty hippo appears in Tales from the Sea of Thieves.
Oh, really?
So yeah. It's actually
they really like
in that book. It's funny how certain characters, like very, very minor characters in the Banjo series, kind of get promoted over time. Like Jolly Roger was another one.
Sure.
You also fight a ghost skeleton pirate in
How
in
fucking
this
awesome
world.
is that?
Matt named him Cap'n Skeleton because it's...
Is he the son of Red Skeleton?
I don't know how to reconcile this with Sea of Thieves lore, considering we have Skellies, but we haven't had ghost Skellies
I know how to.
yet.
Don't.
No, we have to, Nick, we have to. And I will, eventually. But we have to see ghost Skellies somewhere in Sea of Thieves first. Bad Magic Bayou was the third world.
Bad Magic Bayou!
Thank you. This is...
I got a
Swampland.
bad magic Bayou.
Sorry.
It's alright. Unlike Bubble Gloop Swamp, Bad Magic Bayou has a little bit more going on for it than just being a swamp. Bad Magic Bayou also has a haunted mansion.
Yeah, it's Bubble Gloop mixed with Mad Monster, sort of.
Essentially. So what this is it's Gruntilda's original mansion, but it's also the training ground.
Yeah, it's like Gruntling lore.
Where
I love the Gruntling.
Klungo made the Gruntlings here, and the other monsters
awesome.
in Gruntilda's employ, and they also trained them here. There's a training camp.
Train them to do
for
what?
All Gruntilda Central.
And run at people.
It's kind of like a boot camp. I like that not only do we establish like Gruntilda like took over this mansion here, and Klungo set up like his primary lab. Klungo 78, that is.
My favorite of the Talking Heads albums.
This is where they trained all of those like kooky monsters, and the Kremlings we knew where they came from with Donkey Kong Country 2. So like, and I like we know where the Gruntlings came from.
Now, weren't there something called Grublins?
Yes, Grublins were in the original Banjo-Kazooie as well.
Are they Gruntlings?
They're just a different type of monster.
Did they come from Bad Magic Bayou or somewhere else?
I think it's presumed that everything came from Bad Magic Bayou, including like the monsters from Tooie.
Oh wow! So Bad Magic Bayou is the monster making place.
Yeah.
That makes it like my favorite Banjo world. Then
I think the only thing like would be that they didn't come from Bad Magic Bayou would probably be the grunt bots from Nuts and Bolts, which were made later.
I kind of wish the transformation this level was a voodoo doll, so you could like that'd be really cool.
But you know what? I'm glad we got the candle, because every Hanukkah I can use that render.
True.
It brings joy for 8 nights.
And when Elton John dies, you can use it. Sad songs are just the key that gets our tears out of eye jail.
Spiller's Harbor is one of the filthiest fucking worlds that Eddie like. Okay, so you could make a case like, well, Conker's Bad Fur Day had all these off-color blue jokes. Okay, but Spiller's Harbor is essentially just one long allegory for semen and shit.
There's even semen there, like on ships.
Yeah, Spiller's Harbor is... You said, like, everything but Cliff Farm already appeared as an archetype in the Banjo series. The closest Spiller's Harbor would be Jolly Roger's Lagoon from Banjo-Tooie, because it's a resort town. It's
I thought you meant because both have, like, tons of cum in them.
Semen references, yeah. I mean, there are semen jokes. The semen jokes are a little bit... less obvious in Spiller's Harbor until you realize that even the name Spiller's Harbor is referencing ejaculation. Allegedly.
No, it is.
I brought this... When I first met Pete Hentz, I discussed this with him.
As any sane person would.
No shame, even back in 2015. And I think he was delighted that this was my interpretation of Spiller's Harbor. He did not confirm or deny, but he gave us permission to at least roll with our theory for the Tip-Tup suite and be the word of God as far as the Tip-Tup suite goes. We were given that little bit of permission of the DKU. So, Spiller's Harbor is a resort town that Gruntilda has polluted because she's a heinous gendered insult that Nick is not allowed to say. Gruntilda polluted Spiller's Harbor, so there's a little bit of like Rusty Bucket Bay and Grunty Industries in here.
It's probably why it's called Spiller's Harbor, not jizz.
Yeah, but there's so much jizz in here. There's so much fucking jizz.
Is there though? I mean, Tip-Tup Suite, that's just the carpet design.
Let's talk about the Tip-Tup. So within Spiller's Harbor, this resort vacation like village that people love vacationing. There is a suite, SUITE, like the Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, my favorite show. That it's called the Tip-Tup Suite, and Tip-Tup does not appear in Grunty's Revenge. But this being 1978, why would there be a suite, a hotel room called the Tip-Tup Suite?
Because Tip-Tup's ejaculate tastes sweet.
I'm sure it does. I'm sure he drinks plenty of fruit juices.
Yeah, pineapple.
Yeah, pineapple, mango juice. Really makes it go down smooth. There's no Tip-Tup in 1978. He's wee little baby, or there's nothing. There's been no acts of heroism that would warrant a hotel room being named after Tip-Tup, right? It's just called the Tip-Tup Suite because that's its name. But what if Tip-Tup's parents conceived their child in the Tip-Tup Suite, and they named... It's like Ron Howard always names his children after where they were conceived.
Does he really?
That is actually... Yeah, look it up. That is something he does.
Bryce Dallas Howard. That's fucked up.
This is not me being silly.
Wait, so my middle name would be Gettysburg? I'm not even kidding. My parents conceived me in Gettysburg. I was told that.
Oh wow, that's fucked up.
That's not as fucked up as my dad's version of the address.
Did he score at least 4 times? But no, anyway. So this is where Tip-Tup was conceived, and I was helped along with this interpretation of events by the unusual carpeting of the Tip-Tup Suite, which, let's just say there are white blotches all over the carpet. And my interpretation was that Tip-Tup's father...
But if it's all over the carpet, then how did he make Tip-Tup?
There's such a voluminous amount of the fluids that this is their little sexcation spot, and I'm sure there was a lot of...
I think the lights are just black lights in that room, and that's from many different guests.
It's possible, but what goes up must come down, and there's drippage. This is where Tip-Tup was conceived. Chad and I were given permission to run with this.
That's true.
So
it's official canon
it's
now.
Canon.
Word of God.
Banjo-Kazooie Wiki. Why haven't you incorporated this on the Wikipedia page? I am disappointed in you. I am, frankly, aghast. I'm disgusted. I am sickened. Okay, so Spiller's Harbor, ha ha ha, Tip-Tup Suite,
ha ha
sure.
ha.
Alfred
Turtle jism.
Peacock.
Hell yeah.
Alfred,
Mr. Drippy.
He's a peacock.
Okay,
so
you're right. Mr. Drippy Peacock. You're right.
He runs an ice cream truck.
He's my favorite character in the whole game.
Mr. Drippy's.
He's my favorite Banjo character.
Which this actually reminds me of the Adventures of Pete and Pete.
You mean Michael Stipe?
Yeah. So an early episode of The Adventures of Pete and Pete, when it was still a series of specials before it got the full series pickup, they did a summer vacation episode where their favorite ice cream man, Mr. Tasty, they want to know like his real identity underneath his giant ice cream shaped head, and so they get like sucked into the world of ice cream men, the sordid world of ice cream men. And Michael Stipe plays...
Becomes like a Thomas Pynchon novel of intrigue.
Yeah, Michael Stipe, he plays...
Captain...
what's his name?
Something?
It's like something disgusting. It's like a scumsicle or a sludge-sicle. I'm pretty sure it's sludge-sicle. So we've got Mr. Drippy here. Alfred Peacock. Now, he's a peacock, so the cock at least has...
But why a peacock of all things? Why a peacock, you know?
There's a great deal of plausible deniability that goes on with
Captain
all of
Scrummy.
the Spiller's Harbor stuff. Captain Scrummy.
Even worse.
So it's Scrumsicle? Or
yeah,
something?
that's it. He sold Scrumsicles. Oh, God, this picture. It's gross.
Also, there's a picture of Michael Stipe in the modern day here on Google Image Search.
You mean David Letterman? With a nose ring. He's got a nose ring.
Oh, I thought he had snot dripping out of
That'd
his
be
nose.
even funnier.
Okay. So anyway, but besides the semen, there's also a copious amount of shit in Spiller's Harbor, and that's with the characters
Scrum, I like to call it.
Mrs. Squitter and the Squits, which sounds like a great new wave band. Mrs. Squitter is now. It's never really like clarified that she's poop. She might just be sludge or scrum or some sort of like waste byproduct. But and I don't know if they like intentionally like named her after the spider from Donkey Kong Country 2 and 3. But yeah, she's Mrs. Squitter, and her children are the Squits. Good fucking god, this world is bizarre, but I love it. This is like the quintessential. When you're recommending Grunty's Revenge to somebody, it's basically get them to play Spiller's Harbor. It's a treat. Freezing Furnace is a bit of a come down, no pun intended, after Spiller's Harbor.
This level sucks.
No, it's okay.
It's
okay.
just Hailfire Peaks.
It's Hailfire Peaks. So, it's basically a snow world, but with a volcanic core. But there's lore here, Nick. There's lore.
Sure. I just don't remember that many good characters or puzzles in this one.
So Grunty is starting. We see the origins of Grunty Industries in the foundry of Freezing Furnace. She's beginning her underwear factory, but it's just like a makeshift startup here. I appreciate that, and also we have the return of Biggie Foots from Banjo-Tooie.
Oh yeah,
remember there was Big-a-Foot in Banjo-Tooie.
Wait, we forgot Bogfoots in Bad Magic Bayou.
Well, yeah, I was gonna go back to the Bogfoots, but yeah, Biggie Foots. We find out that Big-a-Foot from Banjo-Tooie is actually a Biggie Foot, a type of Yeti.
I love that lore.
Yeah, the Yetis of the Donkey Kong universe are the Biggie Foots.
That's awesome.
So anytime somebody who's a fan of the Donkey Kong Country cartoon show says, I want Eddie the mean old Yeti to appear, we'll say, well, he would be a Biggie Foot, right?
I will say the Biggie Foots are the second best Yetis on Game Boy Advance, though. You ever played a little Game Boy Advance game called Urban Yeti?
No, I haven't.
Google that shit, folks. It's essentially GTA, but you're just a fucking Yeti.
With all the Bigfoot rumors in Grand Theft Auto San Andreas,
it might be where they got it.
That would be very satisfying.
Best box art of all time, by the way. That font. Talk about font, Fraser.
I like the exclamation mark too.
And look at
it's exciting,
the
right?
fourth image is the game over screen. He's just dead, and there's civilians like crowded around him, like, "'Twas beauty killed the beast."
Wait. They did commercials for it where you could order it.
Oh my god.
1877 Get Yeti.
Yes.
Only $29.99.
Such a bad game.
What the hell?
I'll be proud if anything, this episode just spreads Urban Yeti a little bit more.
Oh my god, it has the Nintendo seal of quality. All right.
Quality.
Hold on.
We're
taking a detour.
Okay, we're taking a detour.
We're taking a detour. Get ready to Yeti. Urban Yeti is by far one of the wackiest, zaniest, most bizarre games out there, and it rocks, ellipses. We could just sit and play this game forever, says Game Now magazine. Alright, I'm gonna read the back now of Urban Yeti's box. Throughout time, the legend of the Yeti creature has been with us. No matter what you choose to call it, be it Bigfoot, Sasquatch, poor abominable snowman. Surely it must exist. But how has it evaded our scrutiny for so long? Is it possible that these creatures have been living among us for some time? Isn't it natural for them to want the same things we do? Do they crave the comforts of home and family? The time has come to find out. You must help Urban Yeti deal with the complexities of civilization so he can find a suitable mate.
The ideal mate. It all comes back. Well, I love how, the opening cutscene, it says, the time has come to find out. Urban Yeti, find a suitable mate. That's what it says on the opening dialogue.
Bogfoot is the equivalent of Biggiefoot in Bad Magic Bayou, and Bogfoot is essentially I don't know how up you are on like Bigfoot lore, Nick.
But about as up as Bobcat Goldthwait. So,
Nick, there are swamp equivalents to Bigfoot in Bigfoot sightings. They're called swamp apes. They apparently smell awful, but you got the Yetis, the abominable snowmen. You got the standard Bigfoots. You got the swamp apes. So I like that. I appreciate that. Are they Kongs? That's a debate. So the final fight of Grunty's Revenge. So you fight Gruntilda in her lair, which is called Grunty's Castle here.
Lair, castle. It's
It's the same thing, yeah. So you fight her in the robot, and then you knock her ghost out, and she
quickly, we never really talked about her new design. I like it a lot. I love how her hat is a drill. That's genius.
I do like Mecha Grunty. I think I like it better than her nuts and bolts.
I was going to ask, what's your ranking of Grunty forms? Not as far as, because there's no denying that Banjo-Kazooie Grunty is the best, but as far as visual, aesthetically, what do you find pleasing? What's the order?
I mean, my personal preference, not what I think is best for the series long term, but my personal preference would be original Grunty, Mecha Grunty, Banjo-Tooie Grunty, Nuts and Bolts Grunty.
I actually like the Nuts and Bolts design quite a bit. But I like this one too.
The Nuts and Bolts design, it's essentially Banjo-Tooie's skull in a jar
mixed with
on
Mecha
a
Grunty,
robot.
kind of.
Mixed with Mecha Grunty, but it not as ludicrously
I
robotic.
bet you kids
as
these
Mecha
days
Grunty.
that grew up with the 360 as their first system think that's the first robot Grunty. Kids these days.
More people played Nuts and Bolts than Grunty's Revenge.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying.
I'm not going to shit talk Nuts and Bolts because Nuts and Bolts is a fine game.
Oh, yeah.
But I think Grunty's Revenge is more true to the spirit of the original Banjo-Kazooie games. So anyway, you fight Grunty in her Mecha Grunty form on top of Grunty's lair, and you eventually knock her purple ghost out of the body, and it gets kicked back to the present day, or 1998, because even when this game came out, it wasn't the present day. There are two endings, though, to this game. There is
the good ending and the bad ending.
Yeah, there's a bad ending, and there's
awesome. See, this is why it's better than Banjo-Kazooie. Moral choices. So
the quote-unquote bad ending is not really a bad ending, but if you don't get 100% in Grunty's Revenge...
Which, why would you not? Are you an idiot?
Well, you might have missed some things. You might have just been, blowing through it to finish it, but...
Then you're a moron. This is the best game to 100%.
I actually typed something up a while back on our Facebook page.
Read it.
Explaining the bad ending of Grunty's Revenge.
Read it word for word.
I want to read it. All right, I'll own this. One of the negative consequences of the powerful time travel spell was explored in Banjo-Kazooie Grunty's Revenge, but only if you beat the game without managing to get 100%. It's one of the few times in a rare game that not getting everything altered the ending to the point where life became an existential nightmare for the protagonist. Returning back to the 1990s from 1978, Banjo and Kazooie arrived back at their home, only to have 4 other Banjos walk out the front door. There's never been a stated explanation to this other than Mumbo not getting the spell quite right, but examining the factors that led to it possibly shows the reason. Even though Banjo-Kazooie prevented Gruntilda from changing the past to her benefit, in this case making it so the bear and bird never met, they didn't clean up after themselves. Leaving behind collectibles in Spiral Mountain's past, traces of an adventure that never originally happened in the timeline caused the butterfly effect. DK Vine surmises that the leftover collectibles changed history just enough to affect Gruntilda and Klungo's time travel plans, meaning they didn't attempt them in the exact same way, erasing the events of Grunty's Revenge and replacing them with a close facsimile. When Banjo and Kazooie from Timeline A returned to this new Timeline B, a Banjo and Kazooie who didn't have the same point of departure would already be living there. Ergo, Banjo-Kazooie A would be timeline anomalies. These are basic Back to the Future time travel rules at work here. But wait, what about the other 3 Banjos? That implies something even more complicated, right? Right. It would mean that this would actually be Timeline E. Gruntilda still went back in time and still failed, but the point of departure and return was slightly different for each Banjo and Kazooie. When Banjo-Kazooie A returned, a Banjo-Kazooie B, C, D, and E had already been back in time and then back to the present, each one slightly after the other. So, for example, Banjo-Kazooie B might have collected less items than Banjo-Kazooie C, who collected less than D and E. Each time they would leave a different number of items in the past, the timeline would alter, create a different point of departure and return, stacking up more Banjo and Kazooie anomalies. The only solution to this nightmare would be for Banjo-Kazooie to return, collect every item, leaving no trace, and putting the timeline back mostly how it was prior to the first time Gruntilda went back in time.
I'd like to remind the listeners at home, for no real reason, that Hyle is married and I'm not.
So the good ending, though, is you return and a bunch of Jinjos say, "Yay, thank you. We can return to the Jinjo homeland now." I assume the Jinjos never actually resettled Spiral Mountain because moving sucks. Everybody hates it. You have to get U-Hauls. You have to do this whole thing. Let's take some calls, Nick. We got a couple.
Oh, God. How many are there?
By a couple, I mean, we got 2 couples.
Okay.
4 calls.
No problem.
4
That's
calls
better
to
than
take
the
about...
fucking K-Rool episode. That was torture to sit through, especially when they didn't even... All the calls with stuff you had already talked about.
I know, It's like, hell, man, I can't believe K-Rool got into Smash Brothers.
I honestly don't know if I finished that episode. I think I've heard every conversation, but that one I was like...
Yeah, you just had to ride the wave of excitement, man.
True. That was somehow more annoying than the Donkey Kong Land 2 episodes entirety.
Hey guys, it's Banjo-Kaboom. Sorry if I sound a little funny, I'm a little under the weather. But I'm always excited to talk about Banjo, so I figured I'd call in. Grunty's Revenge probably is my second to least favorite Banjo game, just before Banjo Pilot. But I did get a chance to play it years and years after it came out, though. I only played it on an emulator. And while I didn't love the game, there's still some stuff about it that I did really like that they did. Not crazy about the story, not crazy about Mecha Grunty and the whole like ghost coming out and occupying the body and all that. But I liked that we got the Kazooie backstory. I liked that there was the whole you can choose whatever transformation you want. I think they did a good job with that. And I'm still on the fence about how they like expanded Spiral Mountain to be this like big spooky thing, which I understand it was in the past. But, you know, overall I think it was a really cool game. And I know a lot of people that really, really love the game. I'm just okay with it, but I'm glad that it's in the Banjo series. And I probably sound like I'm shit-talking the game, but I love Banjo regardless, so I'll play anything Banjo. But yeah, definitely a good game to play, and I'm jabbering, and I'm going to hang up now.
How can you hate the plot of Grunty's Revenge, man?
Do you know any good morticians, Hyle? Because Banjo-Kaboom's dead to me.
Well, he called in again.
Hey guys, it's Banjo-Kaboom again. I realized after I hung up that I never actually asked a question, so I figured I should ask you something. And my question is, do you think Grunty's Revenge would have benefited, if I could talk, would have benefited from being more like Banjo-Kazooie or Banjo-Tooie, or do you think it's perfectly fine exactly how it is? Alright, now I'm gone for good. Bye.
Well, I don't know how you could make it more like Banjo-Kazooie and Banjo-Tooie than it already is. it's a Game Boy Advance game. Like, if it was for the Nintendo DS, maybe. Like, because we had 3D platformers on the Nintendo DS. Super Mario 64 DS comes to mind. But there's no way to really replicate that style of game on the Game Boy Advance, at least not to my knowledge. So I think they did as good of a job as they could have. Grunty's Revenge was kind of the last of its kind, or one of the last of its kind. A handheld game that had to differ a great deal from its console counterparts. And I think with the advent of the DS and then the 3DS and then ultimately the Switch, now there's no separation between the two. But Grunty's Revenge came up pretty late in this kind of style of installment in a game series. This counterpart to the main series, your lands to your worlds and countries and whatnot. So would like, if they had just waited to do Banjo-Kazooie for the DS, would it have fared better, like, as far as like fan reaction goes? Sure, absolutely. But I think you would have lost something in that. I think it would have just been another Banjo game then. And while another Banjo game sounds great now, of course, and we all desperately want one, I don't think I would trade Grunty's Revenge as it exists for any Banjo game, because I love Grunty's Revenge for the weird curiosity it is. Honestly, one of my favorite entries in a DKU. It's never going to be in my top 5. Never going to be in my top 10. I know, Nick, it's your favorite game of all time, besides maybe Urban Yeti. It's a game I go back to time and again. Just one of those, like, that just endlessly fascinates me. Thank you for the call, Banjo Kaboom. I'm sorry you don't like Grunty's Revenge as much as we do. Hopefully we can rectify that in time.
Hey, Hyle. This is 9th time caller here, and the only person you don't know that hasn't played Drake and the 99 Dragons, the best game of all time. This week, we are talking about the 15th anniversary of Banjo-Kazooie Grunty's Revenge, a game that, against all odds, somehow actually got released. From what I know of this game, it's kind of like Banjo-Kazooie Grunty's Revenge mobile, except it's just as mobile, or maybe a little less mobile, since it's not on a mobile, which is a phone. The magical gift giver of Banjo-Kazooie Grunty's Revenge was THQ. And I remember when I moved out to where I live now 8 years ago, THQ's headquarters was down the road from me. Then the THQ letters disappeared one day and were replaced by a new company's letters named March Vision. March Vision. March Vision. THQ folded because they released Grunty's Revenge. If only March Vision, which I assume is an eyewear company, published Grunty's Revenge, then THQ would still be in business. Even though THQ under 10 years after Grunty's Revenge was released. Rest in pieces, THQ. But what's not to love about Grunty's Revenge? It's time travel plus Banjo-Kazooie. It's like Season 5 of Lost. The best season, obviously. But with Banjo and Bazai, I assume Banjo is Jack, or is he Sawyer, and Kazooie is obviously Kate. I guarantee you no other caller gave you the insight I just did into Grunty's Revenge. Meow.
Meow indeed, a 9th time caller. Thank you. This is nothing like Lost Season 5, because in Lost Season 5, they time travel back to 1977. In Grunty's Revenge, they time travel back to 1978. They couldn't be more different. Thank you for the call.
Hey, Hyle, and whoever else might be co-hosting this week. This is Sunken, first-time caller into a DK Fine hotline here to talk about Grunty's Revenge for the GBA. Not sure if it was the first time I heard of it, but first time it started popping up in my head is when I saw a friend streaming it a while back. And it brought up my interest to get the game, but short of getting it from eBay, wasn't sure where else. A few days later, popped by used game store, local to my area, not GameStop, and found a copy for $5, and basically 100% of it within 6 hours. And yeah, it's just a nice, fun little Banjo-Kazooie game. It's not, the big console sequel we were all waiting for, but it's just, again, really nice, simple, surprisingly solid isometric platforming, which, especially on the GBA, can go very wrong very fast. But Grunty's Revenge just nails it, and I just, I got a plot rare for the work they've done on that. Now, most memorable thing from the game wasn't necessarily from my playthrough. It actually goes back to my friend who was streaming the game. It was at that part with the lettered tile floor a la Treasure Trove Cove, and the part where you had to spell Grunty's name, Gruntilda. But it was pretty late at night when my friend was streaming this, and at one point she had accidentally spelled Grunty's name as Gruntlad, and all of us in the live stream chat were howling for about a good minute or so. So, yeah, thought wanted to share that with you. And otherwise that's about all I got. And keep doing the good work you do, and see you around.
Yes, we do the good work, the Lord's work of spreading Grunty's Revenge propaganda. Thank you for the call.
Thank you.
And I'm glad Grunty's Revenge got you to call in. So, final thoughts, Nick. Grunty's Revenge. When it came out, and we heard it a little bit with Banjo-Kaboom's call. Why wasn't this game enough for people? People were disappointed that it wasn't like an N64 level Banjo game.
I disagree, but yeah, I don't know what people are.
Well, I don't know what people are expecting because it's a Game Boy Advance game.
Yeah, it's Banjo Land.
It's Banjo-Kalandy. Yeah.
And, that sounds racist.
I said Banjo-Kalandy, not Banjo. Clandy.
The clan.
The Kahlua.
I might join the Kahlua clan.
I could go for some Kahlua. I know, I could go for some Kahlua right now. I don't know, like, it's weird to me because I'm somebody who grew up with, like, the Super Mario Land games, obviously Donkey Kong Land. The whole notion of a scaled-back handheld game, so many, like, scaled-back handheld games were terrible, obviously.
I feel like
but when done
they're
right,
more nostalgic for me as like a kid who could never afford the big games. Like I never had Banjo-Kazooie or Zelda or any of that when they had just come out. I was always late to the party.
Yeah.
But I always had their Game Boy counterpart. Link's Awakening, my favorite Zelda game. Banjo-Grunty's Revenge, my favorite Banjo game. Wink. But yeah, I do love the portable entries.
You could get weird with a game like Grunty's Revenge in a way you couldn't with Banjo-Tooie or even Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts.
It's like getting a little Road Strange or a girl with a piercing. You can get a little weird.
Or the frontman of REM with a nose ring.
Oh yeah, I'm talking about weird. Getting scrummy up in here.
I love my Nintendo Switch. I really do, but I can play Tropical Freeze on it. I can play Ukulele on it, and I realize like it's a shame because we'll never see a game like Grunty's Revenge ever again.
They're all gonna be like just big ass, like the real game. You'll be able to play portable. You won't have a little sister game.
Yeah, you can right now. Yeah, and that's great.
Yeah, of course.
And it's fun, and it's like oh, this is amazing. I can take this game wherever I want on the go. But man, it makes me appreciate like the lands and the Grunty's Revenge all the more because they're a product of a bygone era now. And what I really fear is that modern gamers, not just modern gamers, but gamers who are younger, who are being born today and will go on to become gamers, will never go back and give games like this a fair shake because it's going to be like, well, this is weird. This is stupid. This is like low rent.
We truly have become cranky Kongs, but it's okay. And Godzilla guy has a good point. Pocket Camp for Animal Crossing, but those are like mobile A mobile game's different than a land-type game, in my opinion. It's even more spared down.
I don't know. Like, I feel like Grunty's Revenge, it's still, like, even, like, the mobile experience would be... Which is funny, because we did get a mobile version of Grunty's Revenge. It was just, like, the old flip phones, you know.
They made that mobile version of the video game based on the movie Blade. They made Blade Runner. It sucked.
The end of an era, or it was the end of an era, 15 years ago, the era was ending. We love this game, Nick.
Oh,
I think the whole DK Vine staff has grand affection for this.
Just look at the front cover. That to make his hair, they just used the Photoshop smudge tool. It's so awesome.
I'm glad you brought up the cover.
Wow. And then look at his cheek. That is so blatantly smudged with Photoshop.
I don't know why the cover is as shit as it is. At least the models of Banjo-Kazooie.
Zoomed out, it's not that bad. But Kazooie's eye is like clipping through itself. They didn't even edit
They're polygonal models of Banjo-Kazooie, and they just slapped the pre-rendered fur on them.
Beast Wars looks better
and it looks
than this.
terrible. It looks terrible.
Reboot.
Like they didn't. You know what it was? The same person who wrote the story for Grunty's Curse.
Who is that? I want to find. They're like the worst and best Rare employee I've ever heard of.
No, they had a deadline. They had to get it done in 15 minutes. All they did was they took polygonal models of Banjo-Kazooie and they took the clone tool and they cloned the fur from an actual render of them, which is really bizarre because Mecha Grunty looks so great.
Yeah, that's like a true
comparison.
render. And if you look at I want to know the story behind our art for the characters that didn't Matt have to like recreate them kind of in this style, like shitty paint versions? Because there were no true renders?
Matt created most of the quote-unquote renders.
I think he deserves a shout-out for that.
He took the character models, the in-game character models, and he smoothed them out to create a render-like effect. Oh, real quick, we need to talk about Klungo's model.
Oh, I love it.
And his render in the game. Why does Klungo look this way? I don't know, but he looks even weirder in Banjo Pilot.
It looks like the DKC3 team designed him.
What Klungo looks like is they look like they took basic geometric shapes and just slapped them together, hoping it just vaguely resemble Klungo.
Google, or I know there's a lot of Googling. You don't have to do this, but at home, Google, folks, not Little Big Planet, but Little Big Adventure, a game from the 90s. That its graphics look exactly like this, in my opinion. And Matt's renders remind me of it big time.
Parting thoughts about Grunty's Revenge.
Better than Banjo-Kazooie. I love Mr. Alfred Peacock. That's about it.
This has been a File 2 production.
What can I get you, son? How about a sludge sickle? You seem like a bona fide sludge sickle man.